Capitol was buzzing. Rumors were flying through corridors like wildfire. Reporters clutched their notepads, phones pinged with alerts, and aides scrambled between offices. At the center of the storm stood two very different figures representative: Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator John Kennedy. Asterisk, nobody saw it coming. Not like this. The lawsuit dropped like a hammer. $80 million. Asterisk. That was the figure emblazoned on the front page of every news outlet in America. Senator John Kennedy, known for his Southern charm and sharp tongue, filed a defamation and damages lawsuit against Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. The details? Murky. The motive? Controversial. The fallout? Immediate asterisk. Within hours, AOC was trending on every social media platform, her name bouncing between hashtags that ranged from hashtag EST and with AOC to hashtag Kennedy crushes AOC. The divide was sharp. Lines were drawn, and both sides were ready for war. Asterisk. But how did it all start? Asterisk. 2 weeks earlier, during a heated committee hearing on corporate lobbying and climate legislation, AOC had taken a fiery stance. She accused several sitting senators of acting in bad faith, suggesting without naming names that some had deep financial ties to fossil fuel lobbyists. Her tone was sharp, her words biting. Asterisk. But then came a tweet. A 280-character missile that named names. Asterisk. Among them, Senator John Kennedy. Asterisk. According to AOC's post, Kennedy had allegedly sold out environmental protections for campaign checks and undermined climate action for personal gain. It was brutal. It was public. It was personal. Asterisk. Kennedy's response. Silence at first, but behind the scenes, his legal team was assembling. They combed through statements, pieced together timelines, gathered public records, and prepared a case that would not just challenge AOC's claims, but turn the spotlight on her. Asterisk. Then, the filing. Asterisk. Senator John Kennedy is pursuing legal recourse against Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for defamation, reputational harm, and damages totaling $80 million. The press release read, "This is not about politics. This is about truth," OC fired back. During a press conference on Capitol Hill, flanked by her progressive allies, she stood defiant. Asterisk. I will not be intimidated by lawsuits funded by fossil fuel billionaires and their puppets in Congress. She said, if standing up for the truth brings lawsuits, so be it. I will never apologize for defending the American people against corruption. The courtroom showdown was set. Legal analysts swarmed the story. Constitutional scholars debated the implications. Could a sitting member of Congress be held personally liable for statements made in the course of political debate? Was it protected speech? Or had AOC gone too far? The lawsuit outlined 4 key claims. First, that AOC's statement was knowingly false. Asterisk. Second, that it was made with reckless disregard for the truth. Asterisk. Third, that it caused measurable harm to Kennedy's public standing and credibility. Asterisk. Fourth, that it incited harassment and threats against him and his staff. Asterisk. The evidence. Kennedy's team pointed to security reports, hate messages, and even a canceled university lecture where protesters disrupted the event, citing AOC's tweet as justification. Asterisk. AOC's defense leaned on the First Amendment, arguing her comments were a political opinion, part of an ongoing public discourse, and therefore not actionable. Asterisk. But the trial wasn't just legal, it was political theater. Asterisk. Cable news couldn't get enough. Pundits debated nightly. Social media took sides like it was a Super Bowl. Asterisk. As the case moved into discovery, more fireworks erupted. Kennedy's lawyers subpoenaed internal communications from AOC's staff. They wanted drafts of her statements, internal emails, and any correspondence with activist groups. AOC's team cried foul. They filed a motion to quash, claiming the subpoena was a fishing expedition and a political stunt. Asterisk. The Judge Ann appointee, with a reputation for strict textualism, allowed limited discovery, The ruling sent shockwaves. For the first time, it seemed the case might actually go to trial. Asterisk inside the courtroom. The tension was electric. Asterisk Kennedy's attorneys portrayed him as a victim of political character assassination. They showed clips of media interviews, cited academic journals, and even brought in expert witnesses to assess reputational damage. Asterisk AOC's team fought back with force. They painted the lawsuit as a tool to silence dissent, presented campaign finance records, showed patterns of political contributions, and argued that everything she said was supported by public evidence. Outside, the protests grew. Supporters of both sides filled the streets. Chants echoed across the National Mall. Some held signs reading, "Truth isn't defamation," while others waved placards saying accountability has no party. Then came the bombshell. During cross-examination, Kennedy's communications director was questioned about email coordination between lobbyists and the senator's office. A leaked memo surfaced a draft policy proposal written by an oil industry consultant. The connection wasn't illegal, but it was enough to shake public opinion. Asterisk suddenly the narrative shifted. Asterisk, was this lawsuit really about clearing a name? Or about silencing a rising political star? Asterisk, the judge, under mounting pressure, called for a mediation session. Behind closed doors, both legal teams met to discuss a settlement. Reports suggested Kennedy was willing to drop the case in exchange for a retraction and a donation to an environmental nonprofit of his choice. Asterisk AOC refused. Asterisk, I won't be bullied into silence, she said after walking out of mediation. Asterisk, the trial resumed. The closing arguments were broadcast live. Millions watched as each side made their final appeal. Asterisk Kennedy's lawyers accused AOC of reckless disregard for truth, of weaponizing her platform, and of damaging the fabric of civil discourse. Asterisk AOC's counsel called the lawsuit a chilling attack on free speech, a distraction from real issues, and a desperate move by a politician unaccustomed to scrutiny. Then, the jury deliberated. 2 days passed. The nation waited. Asterisk, finally, a verdict. Not guilty. The jury ruled that while AOC's statements were provocative and controversial, they fell within the scope of protected political speech. No damages would be awarded. The lawsuit was dismissed. Asterisk outside. The courthouse, AOC addressed a crowd of supporters. Asterisk, today's ruling is not just a win for me. It's a win for everyone who dares to speak truth to power. Let this be a message. We will not be silenced. Kennedy, meanwhile, released a short statement. While I respectfully disagree with the decision, I accept it. Brought this case to defend my name. The jury has spoken. But the story wasn't over. In the aftermath of the trial, AOC saw a massive surge in grassroots donations. Her profile rose even higher. Speaking engagements sold out. A book deal was rumored. Asterisk 4. Kennedy, the results were mixed. Some praised his boldness. Others said the lawsuit backfired, shining more light on issues he hoped to bury. Asterisk in the end. The courtroom clash became a defining moment, a symbol of America's deeply divided political culture, and the power of words in an age of digital war. One thing was certain. Nobody would forget the day an $80 million lawsuit tried and failed to silence Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Asterisk. The energy following the verdict didn't dissipate, exploded. In Washington, the aftermath of the lawsuit reverberated through both chambers of Congress. Whispers turned into full-blown conversations. Who would be the next target? This opened the door to a flood of similar lawsuits against outspoken members of Congress. Or would it create a chilling effect, forcing representatives to hold their tongues? AOC wasn't backing down. In fact, she was doubling down. Asterisk 3 days after the verdict, she held a rally in her district in the Bronx. Thousands showed up. The air buzzed with chants, music, and solidarity. She took the stage with a calm, deliberate pace, raising her fist before stepping up to the mic. Asterisk, they thought they could bankrupt us with fear, she said, voice steady. They thought lawsuits could silence the truth. But let this serve as a reminder to every lobbyist, every corrupt Official and every coward hiding behind big money, your days are numbered. The crowd erupted. It was no longer just about the lawsuit. It had become a movement. A new campaign slogan appeared overnight: $80 million worth of truth. Shirts, buttons, stickers, it spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, Senator Kennedy returned to Louisiana with a mixture of pride and bruised ego. He told reporters, "I did what I felt was necessary. Sometimes fighting back means taking the harder road. I've got thick skin and a thin tolerance for slander." But even some of his supporters felt the tide shifting. Became quiet, conservative. Circles, strategists wondered if the lawsuit had been too much, too personal, too risky. It had turned AOC into a martyr of free speech and transparency. It had placed him, once known for his humor and wit, in the role of the angry accuser. The media wasn't finished either. Documentaries were pitched within days. Late-night hosts dissected the case with satire and sharp monologues. Podcasts hosted legal experts and political analysts. Books were proposed from both sides of the aisle, aiming to capture the behind-the-scenes details of one of the most explosive legal showdowns in recent history. In Congress, new bills were introduced. 1. From AOC herself. Proposal 2. Explicitly protect political speech by elected officials from civil liability. So long as it pertained to public matters and was not maliciously false. The bill, of course, sparked instant debate. Critics called it a shield for reckless speech. Supporters called it a defense of democracy. The real twist came weeks later, when a leaked recording emerged from inside a lobbying firm. Appeared to show executives discussing plans to make an example out of AOC. Through coordinated legal pressure and political targeting, the tape went viral. Suddenly, the lawsuit didn't look like a spontaneous move by a single senator. It looked like part of a larger strategy, one designed to weaponize litigation as a tool to suppress political adversaries. It changed everything. Public opinion swung even harder in AOC's favor. Polls showed a spike in her approval rating not only among Democrats but among independents, who saw her as principled, unshakable, and authentic. Within months, she announced a new political initiative, a PAC aimed at supporting candidates who rejected corporate PAC money, fossil fuel contributions, and the influence of dark money in politics. She called it the unbought. Donations poured in. From small towns in Ohio, 2 tech centers in California, people were sending $5, $10, $20 at a time. Her influence was growing and fast. Senator Kennedy, for his part, continued his work in the Senate, still making headlines with his wit and charm during hearings. Yet the stain of the lawsuit lingered. Every time he spoke out against political opponents, journalists brought it up. Every time he took a position on environmental policy, the past resurfaced. Eventually, quiet settlement was reached between him and several activist groups over unrelated campaign finance questions. Nothing criminal, but enough to keep him in the spotlight for reasons he might have preferred to avoid. As for AOC, she became a symbol. Not just of resistance, but of resilience. She appeared on magazine covers, graced international panels, and took meetings with climate leaders, educators, and reformers from around the world. She was no longer just a congresswoman. She was a force. Some said she was building toward a Senate run. Others whispered about 2028. Still, she never let go of the moment that had almost broken her. In an interview, she reflected, "They tried to bury me with lawsuits, but they forgot. A seed. You can't crush truth. You can only delay it." That quote became legend. It appeared on murals, in music, on billboards, and in campaign ads across the country. Students quoted it at protests. Politicians borrowed its rhythm. It marked a shift, a reminder that truth, even when costly, is powerful. The lawsuit that was supposed to destroy her became the crucible that forged her. Next chapter, $80 million. That was the number they had attached to silencing her, but instead, it became the price of awakening a movement. And that movement was just getting started. The summer following the lawsuit's conclusion was unlike anything Washington had seen in years. While the city sweltered under record heat, the political world boiled with a new kind of energy. AOC's calendar was packed with appearances town, halls, rallies, televised interviews, and strategy meetings. Every move she made now carried the weight of national attention. Every word she spoke was dissected, applauded, criticized, or echoed across millions of screens. Asterisk, but behind the scenes, something deeper was happening. Asterisk, progressive candidates, many of them young, diverse, and fiercely independent, began reaching out. They saw in AOC not just a symbol but a blueprint. She took their calls. She answered emails personally. Then she did something unexpected. She invited dozens of them to DC. Asterisk, they met in a quiet, brick-walled space near Union Market. No press, no donors, just a chalkboard, coffee, and ideas. She stood in front of the group, speaking without notes. Asterisk, they came after me with money, with lawsuits, with power, she said, and we're still standing. Now imagine what happens if we stop playing defense. Asterisk, that weekend turned into something like a political boot camp. Campaign experts volunteered their time. Social media strategists taught workshops. Lawyers explained the basics of election law and free speech. It wasn't just inspiration, it was infrastructure. Asterisk, AOC wasn't building a moment. She was building an army. Asterisk, across the aisle, Republicans were watching closely. Some doubled down on criticism, labeling the movement radical and reckless. Others saw the winds shifting. Kennedy, though publicly quieter now, still carried influence in his home state, where his supporters rallied to his side. But nationally, the tide had turned. In interviews, he occasionally referenced the lawsuit as an unfortunate distraction. Asterisk, even so, a bitter lesson remained. Taking on a social media powerhouse like AOC required more than legal paperwork. It required cultural credibility, and that couldn't be summoned in a courtroom. Asterisk, by autumn, the movement had a name forward together. It wasn't a party, but a coalition. It endorsed candidates, shared resources, and leaned on grassroots energy instead of corporate backing. They didn't just campaign, they organized. In swing districts, college towns, red counties with deep income inequality, in underserved urban neighborhoods, they knocked on doors, hosted listening sessions, and registered thousands of newest voters. Asterisk, AOC's influence grew, not because she commanded it, but because she multiplied it. Asterisk, the media tried to frame it as a cult of personality, but that didn't stick. She wasn't trying to be everything. She was trying to show people they could be something. Asterisk, meanwhile, Kennedy returned to what he did best, grilling bureaucrats, poking holes in legislation, and using folksy turns of phrase that made headlines. His base remained loyal, but within the Senate, some of his colleagues began to treat him with a little more caution. The lawsuit had left a mark, not legally, but reputationally. He had crossed a line, and not everyone thought it was worth the cost. Asterisk. Then came the midterms. That's when everything changed. Dozens of Forward Together candidates won their primaries. Some ousted longtime incumbents, others came from nowhere teachers. Nurses, activists, tech workers suddenly propelled into the national spotlight. Their average campaign donation? $23. Pundits were stunned. Election night brought a mix of shock and celebration. The movement flipped key districts, narrowed the gap in the Senate, and injected a new tone into the halls of Congress, not one of compromise. Confrontation with systems long left unchallenged. Asterisk, AOC watched the results unfold in a modest room surrounded by friends, volunteers, and campaign veterans. She didn't speak until the final races were called. When she did, her voice cracked just slightly, not from exhaustion, but from awe. Asterisk, this isn't about me, she said. It never was. This is about all of us who've been told to wait. Our turn to tone it down, to be polite in the face of injustice. We didn't wait, we organized, we showed up, and we changed the game. Asterisk, Kennedy, watching from his home in Louisiana, issued a public statement the next morning. Congratulations to the newly elected members of Congress, he wrote. While we may differ on policy, I respect the will of the people. Democracy is messy and it should be. But privately, sources close to him said he was less generous. He believed AOC's movement was dangerous. It's too fast, too loud, too willing to destroy institutions in the name of reform. He warned colleagues that the pendulum was swinging too far, that populism, right or left, could burn the country if left unchecked. Back in New York. AOC kept moving. She visited newly elected members in their districts, met with union leaders, pushed climate legislation with renewed urgency. But she also began doing something else, recruiting. Quietly. Methodically, she began identifying state-level leaders. She held private dinners with state senators, school board members, city councilors, people with local credibility and deep ties to their communities. She didn't ask them to change their values. She asked them to run. It was a long game, and AOC knew it. Because the real lesson of the lawsuit wasn't about winning or losing in court. It was about realizing how much could be built in the space where power tried to crush you. And then came the question. Would she run? In an interview on the anniversary of the lawsuit's dismissal, a reporter finally asked it outright. Will you run for president? AOC smiled. She didn't answer immediately. Then she leaned forward, eyes steady. I don't have a crown. I'm not here to save anyone. I'm here to fight. And if the people decide that fight needs to be in the White House, we'll talk. The clip went viral in minutes. Kennedy, asked about the possibility of an AOC presidential run, sighed and shook his head. This country was built on debate, he said. Let's just hope it survives this one. But he knew. Whether or not she ever declared a campaign, the real damage had already been done from his perspective, at least. His lawsuit had tried to bury her. Instead, it had built her a launch pad. And the echoes of that $80 million battle were only just beginning. To be heard, The next year unfolded like a fast-moving storm, unpredictable, electric, and impossible to ignore. AOC's Forward Together coalition expanded rapidly, reaching into areas previously thought unreachable for progressives, Rust Belt towns, rural, southern counties, and mid-sized cities burdened by inequality and environmental collapse. It wasn't just about ideology anymore. It was about urgency. People were tired of broken promises, of corporations writing laws, of performative politics. Forward Together offered something different. Action, clarity, and results. And the lawsuits, they kept coming. Not against AOC, but against others in her movement. Local candidates endorsed by her PAC were targeted with defamation suits, zoning violations, sudden tax audits, and orchestrated smear campaigns. Some caved, most didn't. In each case, AOC showed up, not always in person, but with legal help, media pressure, and a massive online community that exposed the attacks as what they were. Desperation disguised as justice. Senator Kennedy watched. It all with a growing sense of disbelief. AOC hadn't just survived his lawsuit. She'd weaponized it as proof of the system's rot hand. Now that proof was being used by thousands. She gave interviews now with calm, composed resolve, always bringing the conversation back to policy, back to the people, back to the power they could claim if they were willing to step outside the lines drawn for them. Still, Kennedy wasn't finished. He doubled down on his national media presence, touring conservative podcasts, writing op-eds in major newspapers, and appearing on Sunday shows to argue that America was slipping into what he called radical populist chaos. He compared AOC to political firebrands throughout history, some famous, some infamous sand, warned that charisma without caution could tear a country apart. Look, he said in one interview, this young lady is talented. She's got moxie. I'll give her that. But moxie without discipline is a recipe for disaster. You want a revolution? Be careful what you ask for. might just get it. But that line didn't land like it used to. The country had changed. The old threats didn't inspire fear. They inspired action. AOC returned to the House floor with a sharper edge, pushing legislation that would have seemed unthinkable just 2 years before: a federal climate emergency declaration, sweeping clean jobs program, public financing of elections. It's an end to stock trading for all members of Congress. Her critics scoffed. Some of her bills died quickly. But some didn't, and with every televised hearing, every impassioned floor speech, every viral moment where she dismantled corporate lobbyists or skewered conflicted officials, her stature grew. Whispers returned. Presidency she still didn't say the words, not yet but her team was moving. Quietly building out operations in early primary states, holding rallies just across state borders, running voter data analytics, meeting with organizers in Nevada, Georgia, Iowa, New Hampshire, not announcing but not denying either. Kennedy, meanwhile, began to isolate. His public persona remained strong, but some in his inner circle noticed a shift. He was tired. He'd lost more political capital than he'd gained from the lawsuit. Though he maintained his Senate seat, he no longer held the same power. Colleagues moved past him. Fresh faces entered the chamber with broader support and louder voices. The GOP, too, was changing not in a direction he entirely approved of. A new Republican senator, young and more aligned with the populist right, began overshadowing him. Kennedy tried to hold the center, but the center was disappearing. 1. Evening, at a fundraising dinner in New Orleans, a donor leaned in and said softly, "You woke her up, John. Maybe you should have just let her tweet." He laughed politely, but the words stuck. Across the country, in a packed auditorium in Milwaukee, AOC was addressing a roaring crowd. The venue had filled in under an hour. People stood in aisles, sat cross-legged on floors, and leaned against walls to hear her speak. Her voice was clear, steady, unwavering. They said we couldn't win. They said we didn't understand power, that we were too idealistic, too loud, too poor, too brown, too young. And when we refused to back down, they sued us. They tried to silence us, but guess what? The crowd leaned in. We're still here, and now it's our turn to lead. The applause lasted minutes. Some cried, some chanted, and somewhere, behind the cameras, a campaign manager checked the time. They were ahead of schedule. In the months that followed, the dominoes kept falling. AOC released a memoir titled Not for Sale: The Fight to Stay Free. It broke records. In it, she told the full story of the Kennedy lawsuit for the first time, how it began, how it broke her down, and how it ultimately built the network that changed her life. She didn't hold back. Names were named. Facts were sourced. And receipts were printed in full. Senator Kennedy responded with a brief statement. She's entitled to her version. I've said my piece. But that piece was long past. He was no longer the one holding the pen. One quiet morning, an email was sent out to Forward Together subscribers. No fanfare. No ad campaign. Just a line of text, black and bold. I'm running. No signature. No logo. Just the words. The internet erupted. Within 4 hours, $5 million were raised. Within a day. Endorsements poured in from sitting members of Congress, mayors, artists, scientists, union leaders, and activists who once swore they'd never vote again. AOC had made her decision. And the nation would now have to make theirs. Kennedy, sitting alone in his home office, watched the announcement video. No anger. No outrage. Just a long, tired sigh. He closed his laptop, rubbed his eyes, and whispered to no one in particular. I should have never filed that damn lawsuit.